Hi, and welcome to the KindlED podcast, where we dig into the art and science behind kindling the motivation, curiosity, and mental well-being of the young humans in our lives.
Together, we'll discover practical tools and strategies you can use to help kids unlock their full potential and become the strongest version of their future selves.
Welcome to the KindlED podcast, everybody. Today, we are in the middle of our three-part series where we are talking to microschool guides who run programs based on the Prenda model and based on all of the ideas that we talk about here on the KindlED podcast. So you can get kind of a behind-the-scenes look at what educating a group of kids like this actually looks like. The struggles, the wins, all of it. So today, who are we talking to, Adrienne?
We are talking to Candi Lehenbauer of Tapestry Academy, and she is out of Florida. And what I love about her, she has had so much resilience and grit and has, kept up her microschool for this. She's going into her 5th year because Prenda predominantly started in Arizona. So she's kind of been this,
Just like a Florida pioneer. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, she's a Florida pioneer. And we'll hear from her today about all the growth in Florida. And we can't wait for this school year because we have a lot of Prendas opening up in Florida.
Yeah, super exciting.
Super exciting.
Let's go talk to Candi. Candi, welcome to the KindlED podcast. We're super excited to have you.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
All right. So tell us a bit about your background and who you are.
Well, I am a Prenda guide. Yay. So anyway, I've used Prenda for 4 years. I'll be starting it in my 5th year this fall. And I actually ran a microschool for 2 years before that. And it's called Tapestry Academy. And anyway, I became obsessed about microschooling like the second I heard about it. So that's kind of an exciting thing that I'm still doing it years later. I also run a directory called Microschool Florida, where I help parents and educators find microschools and homeschool programs. And I'm a homeschool mom of 20 years at least, and I have 6 kids. And I think that's about it. That's me.
Love it. Okay, so can you describe your microschool and how is it different from traditional, and also how is it different from homeschooling?
So my microschool it's kind of changed over the years. I ran across some papers when I very first started my microschool of this is my vision, this is what it's going to look like. And it is so different from that. I didn't want to throw away those papers because it was like it is part of history. I had all of these plans of what it was going to be like, but it's changed. And I think that's okay. It's just morphed every year into something different. And I think it was the year that COVID happened, that was the year, my very first year that I used Prenda. And I did it out of my house and my neighbor's house. And we had 13 kids, and I hired another guide so that we had like 2 of us doing stuff in tandem. We did a lot of field trips and things together. That was a fun and exciting year. It was, my first year of ever getting started and knowing how to do it. And then the next year was super small because I also moved at the same time. So I had thought, everyone will just come back after COVID, but most of them went back into public school. That was at least my experience. And so it was a really small group. And I hadn't really advertised because I was so busy with, we need to remodel bathrooms and let's get the tile in downstairs and, all of those things. And so it ended up being a really small group. We had 5 kids that next year. And I hired an assistant to just kind of help out here and there. But she ended up being like one of my Prenda kids, if that makes sense, because I still covered kindergarten through grade 8 in my microschool. And sometimes the older students just really felt like they needed a buddy or somebody there. And so the assistant that I had coming at times was just like another kid that I was hiring to be there for those older students. But anyway, it's changed a little bit over the years. Then the next year we actually went up to like the full 10 kids. And it just has changed every year. We always have like a couple that kind of stay the same core group of kids. And then there's always a few that change in or out. We've the year that I had so few students, I thought, well, what am I doing wrong? Why can't I get people to join my microschool? And I wasn't able to accept scholarships at that time. So everyone was having to pay tuition out of pocket. And I found that really challenging coming from homeschool world where I did everything for free. Everything that I did was free, 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 free. Run the community center for free. All of my classes were free. Everything was free, but the parents would pay with their time and energy to come and help do stuff. And that actually is kind of expensive if you think about it, because you're paying with your time. But I was changing the mindset from you needed to pay tuition so then I could hire people who were dedicated to doing those roles. And that was a tricky transition for me. But my husband said, you need to stop thinking about school as school. You're trying to recreate it too much. Even though I was using Prenda and I loved everything Prenda, he says, look around and find those things that you would love. Like you see other microschools. We're in South Florida, so there's lots of microschool programs down here. He says, look around and find things that you think are exciting and fun that you would want to send your kids to, and then incorporate those items into your microschool. And so I ended up hiring an art teacher. And then I hired surfing. We went to a surfing class like once or twice a month. And that became kind of part of our, what would you call it? Our DNA for our microschool.
That's so
and then
cool.
I also found a farm lady. She was a homeschool mom that we had done lots of science projects together with the year before. But I ended up hiring her as being our farm lady. And we would go visit her on like just organized field trips that we would do regularly so that the kids would learn. I live in Boca Raton, and sometimes our city is just known for being posh and ladies with high heel flip-flops with their dog that they push in a stroller. And I'm like, that is my city and I get it, but I don't want my kids to feel like that's life. And
Into that, yeah.
Our family is like really normal, like no gated communities, just go and talk to anybody at any time for your neighbors. And so I just wanted to find a spot where the kids could get dirty. They could, hold worms and chase chickens and, those kind of little things that you get in different types of experiences. And there's even like an old fashioned lawnmower, the ones from like the 50s.
Yeah. We literally bought one of those for our kids so that we're like, this modern life is too easy. So we bought one of those so that they would learn some hard work.
That's actually one of the favorite things that all the kids get to do out at Farm Day is to mow the weeds. But yeah, we really like it. I actually really like it too. And sometimes I'll go, I'm just too stressed. Why do we have Farm Day tomorrow? And then I'll go, we have Farm Day tomorrow. I get to walk around for an hour and a half and just be in nature and get to, do all of those things that are just not my typical life. So by changing up kind of the way that we did things just a little bit, it wasn't like it was an everyday thing, but it was just enough planned outings that it kind of defined who we were a little bit. And then all of a sudden the phone started ringing and I got a lot more people interested in my programs. I know Prenda does a lot of those virtual field trips. Those didn't work out so great for me because I'm a couple hours ahead. So every time there was something cool, I was saying bye to all of my students. We'll see you tomorrow. So it didn't really line up. And so I just thought, well, how can I create some of those fun experiences?
Cool.
That's awesome. It sounds like a complete mashup of like traditional school. So they're so structured and it still looks like school, but then you have like the homeschool of the experiential learning and getting out and getting your hands dirty. So you have like a pretty good mashup between the two, it sounds like.
Well, and I'm also thinking too, for all of the homeschooling that I've done for years and years, it's just using the community around you to do stuff. So before when I was in homeschool world, my community were stay-at-home moms that I knew all of their tricks and things that they knew how to do. But now I'm utilizing microschool programs and I guess you would call them like program vendors. They're making a business off of providing these really cool experiences. And then I am paying them for that. So anyway, it's kind of the same thing, but I've just changed the market for people doing things.
So what originally inspired you to start a microschool? And then how did you find Prenda?
I talk about this all the time. I feel like it's part of my makeup story. It is kind of funny. So I went through homeschool burnout. So I'd been homeschooling about 10 years. And I have 6 kids. So 10 years didn't cover everybody in their education. I was like, wow, I am really wishing to do something else. And a lot of times when I would run the homeschool co-ops, I loved all of the families that came and I felt like it was really great. But sometimes the families didn't show up and they wouldn't take it as seriously as I did. So I was providing,
It was free too. Yeah.
it was free. So they were just like, oh, and then I'd see on Facebook, hashtag best homeschool life ever. We skipped school today and we went to the beach, and that they skipped my thing to go to the beach. And I was like, man, that just really hurts my feelings. And it just happened a lot. And I thought, how can I create something meaningful without, being like the mad person all the time? Please just come to my program because I'm not going anywhere. I planned all of my vacations around the homeschool co-op. So you should do the same. But I thought, I don't like that either. I just want people to feel as invested in it as I was. And so during my homeschool burnout phase, I said, fine, I'm not running anything this year. And I actually put a couple kids in school, which, microschooling wasn't a thing so much. And so I didn't even know about microschooling. And so I put my 10th grader and my 4th grader into public school. Like 10th grade, first time to ever go to school. You can handle this. And then the rest of them, I just finished homeschooling them. But it was probably 3 months into it. I just discovered this little private school that was an hour away from where I was. They had came and sing at a choir that I was helping. It was like a big concert, a nativity concert thing. They had performed at it, and they hired the opera lady that came to sing at the concert. And the opera lady was a friend of mine, and she said, you have to come and see this school. It's so cool. And I said, all right. So I drove up there thinking, well, maybe we'll move and we'll send our kids to this school. And as I walked in, I was like, this is amazing. It was not really anything to see from the outside. It was like an old shopping mall. And it was like an old sheriff's department part of the shopping mall. And it didn't look like much from the outside. But then when I walked inside, it felt like a homeschool co-op. But everyone had kind of like matching outfits on. And it was peaceful. And it was 3rd through 8th grade. And I thought, this is what I'm looking for. Like smaller environments. Everybody knows each other. We all know each other's birthdays. And anyway, but then they were charging tuition. And I thought, maybe this is what I need to do, is I need to start my own little private school. Well, first I was going to move there. And then my husband said, we can't move. Life things. He had been asked to do something nearby here that he couldn't move for. And so I was like, okay, great. Now what do I do? And I just couldn't leave the idea alone. And so that's kind of what I call the beginning phase of the water spigot being turned on high. And every single night when I would go to bed, I would have bazillions of ideas on how to start my school. And I would just fill my notebook, pages after page after page after page. And then I'd research online. I would find an article that would talk about this kind of schooling. I discovered the word microschool. I pretty much became obsessed. Every single conversation I had with any person ever was about.
That's how I was too. As soon as I found out about it, I was just like, oh my gosh, everyone needs to be educated this way.
Know about this. This is amazing. This is what needs to happen. And anyway, I said, this is what's going to happen. And I started my business like that March. I still remember where I was sitting when I sent in, it's like sunbiz.org or something, where you have to send in and say, I am now starting a business. And I was terrified, like, there has to be something more to this. Like, you just pay like a few dollars and you say, here's my business. So anyway, it was kind of scary and exciting all at the same time. And then I was like, I just did it. I just started a business. So anyway, it made me a lot more excited. I feel like it was still all of the same things that I'd always been doing with homeschool co-ops, but it added the interesting part to me with marketing, with having to do your financial statements, with just talking to people and convincing them to use your program, figuring out how to do like the little Stripe card to take somebody's credit card payment. I don't know. All of that was just really exciting to me. It felt like I was playing store, like when you go to like the kids museum in your town and you're like, this is so fun. I kind of felt like that's how I was. And the first lady, I took her credit card. She gave me the look like, you have no idea what you're doing right now, do you? So anyway, what can I say? I had no idea. But yeah, I kind of just got started, and I looked into all these different models on, like Acton Academy or different things. And I was like, oh, those look all so cool, but I don't have enough money to like pay their fee up front. At least that's what I thought. And then my first year, actually, when we counted up how much money I spent, I was like, oh, that actually looks really expensive. And maybe I should have paid whatever fee to start somebody else's program. But it was like the school of hard knocks, just figuring out things as I went along. And anyway, so I did it for 2 years kind of on my own. I felt like I had a really hard time attracting people who are not from the homeschool community, because I was like the rogue homeschool educator that I didn't have to like appease anybody. I kind of felt like people perceived me that way from like traditional school. And so I thought there just needs to be some way that I can attract people better. And then also one of my teachers gave me feedback. They said, you're not going to survive unless you partner with another organization. Because, it's really hard to like wear all of the hats. And I was like, I'm paying rent, I'm paying teachers. And at that time I had like a math teacher and an English teacher and a science teacher, and they would come in for little bits of time. And anyway, it was complicated and expensive. But I went home after she gave me her feedback, and I was like, rude, but thank you. Whenever people give you really great advice, you're like, dang it, wish you didn't. But I went home and I Googled microschool organization. I hit enter and Prenda popped up. And this was pre-COVID. So that night I watched like an info meeting. There happened to be one on Facebook that night. And so I went online and I was kind of hearing the spiel Kelly was telling about how it got started. And I was like, oh, that sounds pretty similar to kind of what I'm doing. I was doing like 22 hours a week. So I was like just 2 hours over. And I thought, I could totally morph that. And I was already doing 4 days a week. And so I was like figuring out how it could align. And I thought, I feel like this is very similar to what I was thinking that I was doing. And I thought, I don't know, let's just find out more about it. And at the time with COVID, you guys released this really cool deal of try Prenda for $100. I don't know if you remember that.
I was there.
It was right through the end of the school year. Hey,
I was there.
So I tried that with one of my kids, and that was my first experimental. Let's just see how it goes. And I did it with my third grader, and I just kind of watched her. I didn't really help or do anything. I just said, hey, try out this project. And her first one that she did was build a coral reef. She did it all by herself. Yeah, it was so good. She did all of the steps. She took the picture with her computer, which I did not even know that she knew how to do at the time. She uploaded it and did all of that stuff. And I was like, I can't believe you knew how to do that. And the software was really fun and friendly. I had piloted another program that was like a project-based learning thing. And it was so gross. It felt like somebody's 1970s Excel spreadsheet. It felt like that was like brown and really tiny words. And I was like, I would rather die than get in there and, find out the projects. But this was not like that. It was really fun feeling and like big words and very understandable for the kids to read. And I did not have to help. That was like a really important part of it. So I really enjoyed that. And I thought, okay, we're going to do Prenda this fall. And I was going to do it just with my own kids because I was kind of scared of COVID, how that was going to all work. But my next door neighbor was the one who said, seriously, you can't just start a microschool. And then the time when we actually need you to run a microschool. No, just kidding. I was scared. So I ended up doing it. We had those 13 kids and had a lot of middle school boys that year, which was fun all by itself. Yeah. Lots of middle school boy jokes, but I survived. And if anyone can do a bunch of middle school boys, anybody can. So anyway, that's kind of how I got started. And I can't say that I went into it thinking that I was going to do Prenda all the way because I didn't fit in Prenda's model at the time. So you guys were, hey, we're in Arizona. I was in Florida. I'm like, but hey, I'm over here. So I kept being like just outside the box, but now I'm in the box. That's awesome. It only took like 5 years.
We're so excited.
Prenda's not meant to be a box. It's meant to be like a foundation that you can, and we want people to add true. And, tweak and things like that. Cause there's no one right way to do it. And there's not a one size fits all. Like we don't want to create a one size fits all. We already tried that last
Which
100 years and it
found,
didn't work. So, so you're doing it
I found it
perfectly.
kind of reassuring that I never really fit the model, and yet here I still am. So I think that's kind of like for parents too, who are trying to figure it out.
Yeah, we don't want a bunch of little cookie cutters. Like we want, unique, creative guides and parents and real kids making the education that works for them. So that's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah. And I love that now with, being able to expand in Florida because of the scholarship program, there'll be more of a community for you, which is really exciting.
Yeah, that's good. I know I'm always surprised. I'll look on the thing and I'm like, what? There's one in Delray Beach. I didn't know that. That's like 20 minutes from where I am. So anyway, and I think some of them are microschools that already did exist and they are just adopting the Prenda platform, which is really cool. So
that is awesome. So how do you balance structure and flexibility in your microschool?
I try to be, I guess I'm overly excited about structure, which can be a problem sometimes. Not everybody is that way. I find that when I do use Prenda, I don't have to be as planned as I used to have to be. And so I really appreciate that. So things that I plan now are the fun things, like the field trips or who are we going to invite to our microschool? Like once we've invited somebody to come and do like a cooking demonstration or different things like that. So I like planning those types of fun things with the kids and with like the other people. I have like an assistant that helps me as well. And I also have a reading specialist that I hired last year. So that's been kind of fun to just have an additional adult around to ask questions with. But keeping it structured, I can have like my old school planner that's in pencil where I just kind of like jot down ideas. But it's not like one of the teachers that I hired years ago, she had like the full on written, here's what we're doing, blah, blah, blah. Here's all of the standards in the curriculum and all of that stuff that need to be met. And I was like, you don't have to do that. I don't think that's just kind of wasting your time because the software right here already has all that written down in it and we can just utilize that software instead. So it's easier to not have to do the technical type things, focus on the fun things, focus on the relationships that I have with the kids and the families.
Talk about that a little bit. How do you create like a culture of like connection in your microschool? How do you build those relationships, both between you and the kids and like from kid to kid?
It's a constant effort. And there are sometimes clashing personalities, which I wish didn't happen. Like every time that happens, I'm like, come on. There's
part of the human experience though.
There's 10 kids. How could it be that some of you are not getting along with each other? One of the things that I've tried to do is I always try to have like an outside, like we mesh with bigger groups of kids a couple times for different things. So I have like a science Olympiad team that I do. It's with the homeschool community and we just meet at a park and I bring my little microschool kids and then other homeschool kids come and then we plan like these little tiny science lessons. It's nothing big. It's mostly kids playing at a park and then we like blast water rockets. Like that's kind of the idea, right? But by doing that, it gives the kids more of a pool so that we're not like constantly focused on each other. Like, oh, I don't like having breathed on me. That can happen just like in a family. It happens in a microschool too. And so even with my own kids, like I always had 6 kids. So I've always had kind of a microschool. The kids really love seeing other people. And so if you plan those things to look forward to and adventures and other people, then it kind of breaks down the need to want to have all of your needs met by like those 2 little people that are in the class with you. I always try to match grades too, or ages and temperaments. Because I serve kindergarten through 8th grade. I don't ever want there to be like 10 8th graders and like this one little kindergartner. I always try to be like, there's at least somebody for everybody. And that has backfired a few times. Like the 2 people that I thought, hey, they'll get along great together. They don't. But that's when I have like my outside friend group type things that kind of help.
How do you tap into the students' interests? And because we talked about you allow like the software to do its thing and then you create experiences. So how do you help the kids really tap into what they're interested in, in their learning?
Yeah, I kind of follow like this 3-year cycle. It's something I learned through classical conversations. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that
Yeah,
curriculum.
Charlotte Mason does like a 3 or 4 year cycle as well.
Yeah, 3 or 4 year. And, the Susan Wise Bauer, she did the 4-year.
Yes.
So with figuring that out, I kind of follow the cycle of the 3-year plan. So this year we're doing like ancient times, like ancient Egypt, ancient China, or
That's what
whatever.
I'm doing this year too with my
fun.
kiddo
We should
that
share
does.
ideas.
Yes, we should.
We did America and those types of things, and Florida history. And then the year before that, we did like the Middle Ages and Renaissance time period. But anyway, I have like my 3-year time cycle that we go through all the time. And then I do like a 3-year cycle of the sciences so that we're all kind of covering main things. But then after that, those are kind of like our whole group, big picture type things. But if the kids want to do like a Prenda World project, we try to make Prenda World project time frequently. So the kid who is obsessed about World War II, because that happens like every single year, can make some really cool project about World War II, even if we're studying the ancient civilizations. I'm fine with that. The very first year I did Prenda, I was like, no, you can't do that. We're all focused on this one thing. And I was like, that's not really fun for anybody. You have to be able to let them really get into that project that they really want to get into. So giving them free time to do those things. The younger kids, they don't really care as much. They're happy to do bugs or whatever it is that you're all doing as a group. But once they hit like 4th or 5th grade, they really want to do their thing, whatever that thing is. So giving them lots of free time for Prenda World projects is good. Although as a guide, that can be like really stressful when you've got like hot glue
So
guns
many things going on.
like every corner, and it's like over here I'm sewing, over here I'm like building, I'm like, that's a lot.
Well, we heard you say that you really like structure, so I can see why it's helping you grow too.
Structured, as I say, 1 hour is Prenda World projects, and then we clean up. So at least I know it's a limited amount of
Controlled
time.
chaos.
Controlled chaos, yeah. And I don't have glitter around, so maybe that's one way.
Just no glitter. I love that.
Not
That's a
allowed.
good boundary.
No
That's a
glitter.
good boundary to have. I love that. One
So,
time, though,
yeah.
just be forewarned, I ordered, this was early days Prenda when we were vetting like recommended supplies. And so I'd ordered this kit of like 30 whiteboards or 10 whiteboards or something. And they came in this box and I was so excited and I opened it. And at the whiteboard factory, they'd just taken a bottle of glitter and dumped loose glitter into this box just to add a little sparkle to my whiteboard order. And I'm like, why? There's purple.
It's my worst nightmare.
I just wanted some whiteboards. Why did you ruin them? Anyways.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, glitter's terrible. I don't know who invented that. Glitter glue's okay.
Glitter
I can
glue,
do that.
Happy medium.
But,
yeah. Okay, so how do you encourage your students to take ownership over their learning?
That one's a tricky one because my main go-to is to just say, this is what you're doing and go do it. And I actually had some really huge aha moments when I was reading the self-directed, is it self-directed?
The self-driven child.
Yes, self-driven child. So I listened to that and I was like, oh my gosh, I should have done so many things differently in raising some of my kids.
Okay.
So after reading that, I feel like it totally changed night and day. Even as a microschool owner, like I was like, I cannot tell them. I need to inspire them. And you guys have always had podcasts and this, that, and the other, but I wasn't really, I would take in the feedback, but for the book, I was just like, I plowed right through it. I think I listened to it like in a couple of weeks. So it was like during breakfast time, lunchtime, driving.
Yes, I devoured that book too. It was right before we found Prenda. I had read it and it was like, allow your kids to leave school. And so someone told me about Prenda and I was like, okay, we're going to do this. So they left school and never went back. Yeah.
I know. I just thought it really just helped me think about it more deeply than I had before. And there are some students who come and they've really been scarred, I guess you would say. Like they think that they aren't good at school, or they think they're not good at all kinds of things. And so they just come and they're like these little fragile beings, I guess you would say. And then after a couple of weeks, they see that we're happy to have them there and participating and doing stuff. And then they start emerging. And it feels to me like it's always like a 3 or 4 month process. So they'll come in August. Around January, I finally have a kid who's able and willing to do the things that we're talking about. But we've been doing the same concept every single day for the entire school year up until that point, but they don't get it. And then when the light clicks on, they're like, oh, you mean I could actually do this on my own? Like,
Yeah.
even when we're doing projects here at school, I could say, no, thanks. I would rather do one of my other, like,
it takes them a long time to like
yes,
find their voice and their like self-advocacy muscle, right? When it's been like bred out of them essentially.
Exactly. And they start thinking, I could do that, or I could, we had a student last year who was like, nope, I don't read. And, they were a few years behind, I guess, in the reading thing. And then all of a sudden they were like, hey, I just read that. That was actually kind of cool, So I love the fact that you also take them back to where they are, not where they're expected to be, and then let them grow from there. I think that's huge. And I wish every kid in school knew that you could do that. And every parent who is stressing about all the homework that their kid is really behind in, I wish I could give them. In fact, that's kind of what I do in my directory, the Microschool Florida directory. I try to give them little sneak peeks of, here's a family who stepped off that conveyor belt and they're okay. And you can be okay too. And you don't have to be taking your kid to a psychiatrist to deal with anxiety and depression, when you can just get rid of that and go, where are you at right now? And where are we going to
change the environment instead of change the kid,
and give them a path towards hope, right? Like their kids are constantly inundated in this feeling of, or this message that like, you should be here and you're not. So you're insufficient, you're lacking. And then it's like, not only do you have to continue to keep up with the ever ongoing march of like that curriculum schedule, because you're 9 or whatever, it's like, and then you also have to keep up. So it's like it's literally, and you have to do that in every subject. It's an impossible ask. It's so anxiety inducing, and kids just throw their hands up and give up. And then they become behavior issues and all sorts of, thinking about changing the trajectory of a child's life here. Right. And to be able to be like the impetus and like the mover in their life to say like, hey, different train tracks, like you can control this. It doesn't have to just be like a straight line. Like we could take a boat, we could take a Vespa, like we can go to this other location. There's this whole creative world out there that you can really explore and define for yourself. And I just love that you're just doing that for kids on repeat. It's amazing.
It is awesome. Not all of the kids love it. Like I wish they all did, but they don't. And that's okay. I feel like we fill the needs for that time period and help them see that something was a possibility. And I always think they'll look back on it too and go, actually was really cool when we did that.
Yeah. And it challenges them, right? Like you're not going to, if it's a very challenging time in a microschool where it's like, yeah, this is uncomfortable for me to be able to like make instead of just do this worksheet and get the points. Like it's a lot more uncomfortable sometimes in a microschool to be doing self-directed learning. So they're not going to quote unquote like it all the time, but we are pushing them, and we are, I think you're right. It will in the long run,
especially because we're in a culture like in general. I mean, I know probably a fraction of friends with kids in an environment like this. And so still our culture is very that, like you said, that conveyor belt education. So I think that probably influences some of these kids to not love it either. But like you said, they may look back and be like, you know what, I can think and I can, do these skills that even though I didn't think I liked it at the time, it has really helped me shape the person that I am. So I think that's really important to keep that in front of mind if you're a parent or an educator doing this kind of education, because it's just different. It's very different than what the masses are still doing for education.
I just looked this up if you want to listen to our other episodes about the self-directed or the self-driven child. It's episode 3 and episode 42, where we talk to the co-authors. So just a side note. Okay. Yeah. So next, and then I was actually on the Self-Driven Child podcast the other day. So we can link that too.
You
Yeah. There's
were so cool.
With Ned
two-part.
Johnson, yeah.
It's fun. Tell us some stories, like tell us some wins. How is being able to provide an inquiry-driven, curiosity-driven, mastery-based program education to kids? Like what wins have you seen?
I've seen a lot. I like to share, there was we had a student come to us in 8th grade, like in November, and they said that they had tons of anxiety and they would hide in the bathroom every day at lunch because they couldn't handle the pressure of eating with friends, and that was just too much for them. And so they said, we were friends, and they said they'd actually come to a bunch of my parent nights over the years because they knew that I did this little program, but they were kind of just watching from afar. But they finally said, this is what we're dealing with right now. Can we have her try the program? And so they did. And it was within like 2 weeks. It was a huge difference. And my daughter was friends with her, and they said, what did you do? They're so different. Like they're running around, they're playing and happy. And I just thought it was such a short period of time too, like 2 weeks. That's shocking to see that they could be their regular selves. And I can't say every day was like lovely, no problems ever. Like they still had to get over a lot of anxiety and different things, but we were able to show them a safe space to just learn and grow. And they ended up transferring out of my program the next year because they had outphased the age. And we found a different microschool program for them that worked really great for them. And I was super excited to.
Yeah, she was stuck in a chronic state of stress, and then all that stress was released and our brain was safe again. Because we've seen that with one of my kids too. He was in traditional school for 3 months in kindergarten. And we both only made it 3 months. And I'm not saying it just wasn't a good fit for him. I'm not like, downplaying traditional school, but I was attuning to where he was and where his brain was, and his brain just was not safe. Being forced to sit still and put his head down once he was done with work and those kinds of things. And so he wasn't talking at all. And then we brought him home, deschooled him for a couple of months, and then he went right back to, so it's just communicating. Like they might not have the words to communicate, but their brains are just trying to keep them safe. So next question, what advice would you give to educators or parents looking to create more empowering learning environments?
For educators to create more, or for parents?
Or both, yeah.
Or someone who is maybe thinking about like starting a microschool or,
I'm always a huge advocate for that. I feel, everything that I do on my directory is all about people starting more programs. Because if you think about it, if another microschool starts, it's just like a classroom next door to you opening, where you can pop over and go, hey, do you have any extra glue? So that's kind of the feeling of it. It doesn't need to be competitive. Although at the beginning, when I first started my microschool, I felt very protective of anybody who called me or asked about my program. And then it kind of changed my mindset. And I said, this is kind of dumb. When they live literally an hour away from where I do, I can't serve them as well as that other microschool that's literally right down the street from them. And so I started just sharing where those locations were with the families. And I feel like that was when my brain shift happened. And it's also when I started to have a lot more success in my own program, because those microschools would refer people to me as well. So we can't be everything for everyone, although I'm a people pleaser and I really wish I could be everybody's cup of tea. But I know that when I give freely without expecting anything in return, that's when I feel the happiest. And people do that the same for me as well.
I love that.
So just, giving referrals. And parents, if they call and they're like, hey, this is the kid that I've got. And I'll say, here's 3 ideas of somebody that you could go to.
That. Just being helpful, keeping the kid at the center, serving families. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Candi, thank you so much for coming on the Kindle podcast today. We've really enjoyed this conversation.
Hey, it was awesome.
Yes, thank you.
All right, we'll talk later.
That's it for today. We really hope you enjoyed this episode of the Kindle podcast, getting to hear from another Prenda guide. And if you listen to part 1 with Julia, you'll hear some different things. You'll hear some similar things. And even though they're across the country from each other, so super exciting. And if this episode was helpful to you, please like, subscribe, and follow us on social media at Prenda Learn. If you have a question you would like for us to address, please email us at podcast@prenda.com. You can also subscribe to our weekly newsletter, The Sunday Spark, by going to prenda.com.
The Kindle podcast is brought to you by Prenda. Prenda makes it easy for you to start and run an amazing microschool based on all the ideas that we talk about here on the Kindle podcast. If you want more information about becoming a Prenda guide, just go to prenda.com. Thanks for listening, and remember to keep kindling.